Well, Jay, we always record the intro after we actually do the interviews and the show, and this is no different. But I do want to say, looking back, this might have been my favorite special that we've ever done, and it was so fantastic for us just to listen in to all of the stories and the comments and the information that everybody shared with us on the show. This really was a wonderful, wonderful special that we did.
Yeah, we had on Kristin Robinson from Billboard and Bobby Owsinski from Music 3.0, Matt Adell from Music AI, and Virginie Berger from Matchtune. And these are four people that we consider to be, sort of thought leaders in the field of music and AI. And it's been such a hot topic lately. And as you said, it was just such a great conversation. And I hope we can do it again. So here, without further ado, a very special episode of the Your Morning Coffee podcast, our AI Roundtable. Let it roll.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand! Your morning coffee is on the air. On the air. On the air. On the air. On the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
What's really surprising is just how quickly AI has become such a big part of everybody's lives. Mike and I were talking about Martin Clancy's book, a few years ago, talking about music and AI, or I think it was 4 or 5 years ago at Music Tectonics, they had a panel on music and AI, and we were thinking, yeah, right, in 30 years, that's going to be there. Sort of like back in the day when I worked at Universal, we were talking about that celestial jukebox that became streaming. It's not a thing until it is. Anyway, I'd like to talk a little bit to kick this thing off about just how fast AI, generative AI, has become a part of the conversation in almost everything in the music business. And I'll sort of kick that off with you, Bobby. And for those of you who don't know, Bobby wrote this amazing book, the Musician's AI Handbook, that we talk about quite a bit. Bobby, talk about just how fast this has become a part of our lives.
It's become so fast, but that being said, it's been coming for quite a while. For instance, I'm in the music production side, and we've really had it for 5, 6, 7 years there, although it wasn't hyped as AI. It was mostly called machine learning, which is a part of AI. So we've had it for a while. It's been sneaking up, and then finally it became, top of everybody's consciousness.
Talk about some of the things in the studio. Was that mastering? Was it noise reduction? What were some of those machine learning things that you were using it for?
Well, there was one company in particular, Isotope, who's been on this before anybody, really. And again, they don't broadcast even now, but that's what they're doing. So they were ahead of everybody, and now we find it being used in just about every kind of audio processing you can think of. But it's more successful at some than others. So, for instance, it's very successful in track separation. It's very good at that. It's exceptionally good at noise reduction. It's not as good at other things. It's good as a starting point, but it's not particularly great at finishing. Mixing, for instance. It is reasonably good at mastering.
Can you take those separations that you talk about, Bobby, and make a Sony 360 or a Dolby Atmos mix out of a separation from a stereo or mono master? Is it that good?
You could, but the problem is there's a limitation on how many things that you can separate out. Most of them are limited to 5 tracks, 5 stems. And the stems are generally bass, drums, vocal, and it might be a piano, and then everything else. Yeah. Other, as they would call it.
But you can't separate vocals either, though, can you? Like, you can't listen to a stack of vocals and pull those out.
No, it's just vocals in general, everything. So, there are some that are kind of going towards being, more all-inclusive, but they're not quite successful yet. So there's limitations. And that's one of the things that I think people misunderstand is there are limitations to this. Everybody thinks that it's more all-encompassing than it really is at the moment, at least in my area of the business.
Mike, you had a really great question to sort of tee everybody up. You want to jump into that?
Absolutely. So I'd like to ask each one of you, what are you most excited about in a good way? And then and then the flip side of that is what horrifies you and scares you and keeps you up at night, the other side of the coin. So I'm looking, I'll go clockwise from what I see. So Matt, I'll let you start.
I'm looking forward to a robust direct license ecosystem in which all the training data is selected from people or rights holders who have opted in through direct licenses. And I'm looking forward to those people being compensated with a substantial revenue share of all revenue associated with training and outputs.
And at night, what scares the dickens out of you?
Nothing.
Wow. All right. Kristin,
Nothing. We've seen this before.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's easy to get panicked. But Kristin, how about you? I mean, your wonderful machine learning newsletter, and this is something in your wheelhouse for sure, both sides.
Yeah. I think the good side, what I'm really excited about is all the opportunities this presents for catalog marketing. I feel like there's so many fun, interesting, cool things we can do to bring to life amazing works of art that the next generation probably doesn't know too much about. I also think like the idea of taking recorded music is such a static form. I could understand how some artists might not like to move it from their perfectly engineered master recording. But I do think that like people will want to play with their music a little bit more in future generations. And I think AI can enable people to make remixes easier or speed up, slow down, like just kind of have more interaction with the static form of the recorded music. So that's the thing that I'm excited about. The thing that keeps me up at night is how difficult it will be to prevent streaming fraud. I think that this will make it quite hard to catch. I think there's also going to be some challenges with streaming services in the future and how we navigate them. Because if generative AI music can be made at the click of a button, but human-made music takes much longer than that, we could end up with Spotify being full of majority AI tracks that are hard to sort through. And that might be someone's pride and joy, and they feel good about the AI music that they've made, and that's great. But there's also the potential that some people are just like throwing up a ton of AI music so that they're could hopefully collect royalties and game the system. I just think that's going to be harder and harder, and it'll keep evolving as AI develops, and that's just going to be quite a challenge.
Yeah. Virginie, I can tell you your article in Forbes kept me up last night, literally.
Oh, thank you. It's I have exactly the same issue, actually. It's, for me, the, I would say threat, but also maybe impact. It's DeepSeek, but not only DeepSeek, because, yesterday Baidu, Alibaba, and many other Chinese AI company just announced a new system. So just to sum up DeepSeek, so it's a fully open source model, actually, so that anyone can download DeepSeek, anyone can run it locally on your own machine. So actually you can create your own LLM and you can train your own data set. So that's why, in terms of accessibility and flexibility, it can be super interesting for the music industry. Like, you can, train your own AI model. So Matt talked about, copyright and licensing model. So you can train your own data set. And like that, you can also, control the IP. You can also build really specialized tools for songwriting, for mixing, for mastering, for music recommendation without relying on Spotify. You can work on your own, music discovery and curation without relying again on the black box algorithm of Spotify. So you can, maybe create more transparent curation. But the big potential negative outcome and the big risk for the music industry, it's, those open source LLM plus AI computing, quantum computing plus AI agent. And because of this, because DeepSeek will allow anyone to train an AI model, so which means that people can easily modify music AI system to evade copyright detection. First, you can also modify all, closed AI system to bypass copyright filters. You can also just, mimic real artists more closely, which means that it's going to be almost impossible to detect and get copyright claims. So that's why, in terms of licensing, publishing, I'm really, really, really worried. And when you see that AI quantum computing is really coming, which means that by, I would say, next year, in the next 2 years, so you are going to be able to create, as many music systems as you'd like, as you want, plus AI agent. And AI agent, it's a big, big threat for the music industry because it can just, destroy entirely the middlemen, like digital distribution, for instance. What is the point of having digital distribution when you can just create an AI agent between the musicians, the creators, and the DSPs, even for DSPs? Because if you start running your own LLM on your machine, what is the point of DSPs? So that's why it creates plenty of questions. Yesterday, OpenAI who said that maybe they own the output. So what is the point at the end? Where is the IP? So that's why I'm what's coming. I'm trying to find positive outcome, but I'm a bit mixed right now.
Yikes. All right. That's not helping.
No,
okay.
I know.
And Bobby, sorry, go ahead. Bobby, yeah, how about you?
I agree with all you guys, and you're speaking from the cutting edge. I'm going to take a step back here and look more at the everyday user. And what I've found, at least in my end of the business, is where last year there was so much trepidation. Everybody thought AI was coming for their business, for their job. That was going to take over as a musician, all of those things. This year, there's much less of that. This year, it's pretty much like ho-hum. AI again. No big deal. The good part about that is I think people are now going to begin to use it as a tool, and they feel more comfortable in doing that than they did before. And before they're terrified. Now it's like, okay, I'll try this. I'll use it as a tool. Oh, gee, it worked. So I think that's the good part. And I'm not talking from a future tense at all. I'm talking about kind of like right now, what's happening and what people are feeling.
Yeah, and what about keeping you up at night?
Yeah, well, both Kristin and Virginie both mentioned this, and I agree. It's the pollution of the streaming services with AI songs, and we're seeing it already. Liz Pelly's fabulous new book describes so much of this. And, it's here, it's happening right now. We're also seeing the decimation, and we're talking about my side now, of a couple of different industries. And one is production music, where production music was really big for composers. That was a big income. And one of the things about production music is it's music that doesn't call attention to itself. Well, what is AI music? It's just that. It's really good at that. And so it's really putting a hurt on that end of the business. And audio mastering is another thing, because it won't beat a mastering engineer, but for the purposes of many, 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 many artists, it works very well.
I wanted to jump in on something that Bobby said about production music. I did a story about this for Billboard, and in it, I spoke to someone who makes primarily their living off of making production music with aspirations of being like, the biggest, composer for film and TV ever someday, but he's not there yet. And he was telling me, he was like, honestly, I hate making production music. It's not my dream job. I don't enjoy it that much. I'm essentially given a prompt. It kind of feels like AI. It's like I'm given a prompt and I have to write to it, and then I don't own the music anymore and I just forget about it and move on. But the problem is, he said, is that he feels like if production music were to go away, it would eliminate the bottom rungs of the ladder for a lot of film composers. And I think that's what a lot of these jobs that are threatened to be automated away by AI in some way or another, it's about the bottom rungs of the ladder being pulled up, making it even harder to make your way in. And I think we all know it's already hard enough to try to become a film TV composer. So it definitely threatens the young composers and the young engineers and our younger creatives.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I want to talk about AI as a tool because we freaked out over drum machines, synthesizers, sampling. And it seems to me that there are people out there that are really using this in an interesting way. For example, today Randy Travis released his new single, Horses in Heaven. And just like his last single, Where That Came From, it was trained on, the AI was trained on his voice. And it was a real song written by real songwriters. And of course, he had a stroke and he can't sing. But now through AI, he can. And I think that's remarkable. And one other one is I've been using this company called Astral, and they've taken 100 episodes of our podcast and just trained on that. And it's sort of like a chat GPT where you can go in and, what's the Music Modernization Act? What is this? And it's only drawing off of that particular body of work. And I find that fascinating for, maybe publications like Billboard, or maybe for a doctor who only wants a certain set of documents being trained on. Let's start with Matt, and we'll go around the horn again. Talk about some interesting ways that people, maybe it's you, Matt, are using AI in your business.
Well, Bobby mentioned a lot of the non-generative tools out there. And Bobby's absolutely correct that the non-generative tools like mixing and mastering have been present for a long time. Lander was really a leader in that. And obviously we're seeing voice modulation and voice deepfake tools out there that are interesting, I guess. Personally for me, I want an AI in my laptop so that when I'm playing drums at home, I can jam with friends. This is my fantasy, but to do that would require a model trained on many, many millions of songs and then fine-tuned on prints. And I wouldn't want to use a model until I knew that everyone involved was getting paid and they had opted in. A lot of these times when people are talking, Jay, about private models, a lot of the times what they're talking about is a custom fine-tuned model. And so it is possible that, and I don't know the science behind the Randy Travis track, but a model needs to first learn how to produce human language before it can learn to sound like Randy Travis. And so in all likelihood, most models that are custom are not only looking at the custom data. There's a large base model that hopefully didn't steal all its content, but most of them have. And then they're fine tuning to create this custom experience. And so the risk for a lot of musicians out there right now, and I would be very careful, is if you're using Suno, let's say, even just for ideation purposes to get rid of writer's block, you may end up actually just copying someone else's work. And so I think musicians, brands, any business that anybody who hopes to make a business out of the end result that's created should be very careful about what is inside the data of the model they're using, because they may be causing themselves nightmarish copyright problems in the future.
Yeah, and Kristin, what kind of tools are you using? I can tell by your writing that you're actually interviewing people and you're doing the research and maybe you're on the earnings calls, whatever it is. I don't think you could do your job entirely with AI, but are you using any tools and tactics?
I have a subscription to Claude, but I mostly just use it for personal reasons. Claude is Anthropic's large language model, but it's like against our policy as a company to use AI in the writing process. I am very curious to see how media develops and how journalists start working with AI at some point. I do think that as journalists, we all pride ourselves on our personal expertise and doing all the hard labor ourselves. And I think that in a time when we're all worried about like the quality of the stuff we're seeing online is decreasing, the value, I think, of like a truly great publication increases. Although I do think there's going to be business struggles ahead for every media company to adjust to. But I mean, like, these LLMs couldn't train without like pulling from a bunch of journalists and pulling from a bunch of other great, like, well-written material.
Yeah. And Virginie?
Oh, so first, I'm not, English or American, as you can hear it. So I use a tool is Grammarly, because when I write, I write for Forbes and I write for other media, and I want to make sure that everything is correct. So Grammarly helps me a lot to make sure that my grammar is correct. So yeah, it's funny because even English speaker tell me that they use Grammarly to make sure that their grammar is correct. I use also ChatGPT for me to understand, because my job is to understand AI, because my company uses AI to detect AI. So I need to understand all the time, what's happening. I started my career at Microsoft. I'm a trained lawyer, actually, so I'm not a technologist, but I started as with Microsoft. So I just use, ChatGPT, and I ask all my questions about what it is, what do you mean by, when they say distillation, when they say this, actually ChatGPT, trains me to understand, AI. So it's quite interesting because I need like examples. But I started to work on AI in 2012. Because we talked about machine learning, but in 2012, I remember I started to work with a startup on recommendations, and really, with Spotify. And it was super interesting in 2012 to see how you can use AI, machine learning, to start building the first playlist recommendation. So that's how I started to work on AI. And now, mostly for me, it's also because as I live in the US, sometimes, what should I do with IRS? How does it work? When I had to understand health insurance, I didn't understand anything. So I put everything into ChatGPT and just explain to me what you mean by copay, what you mean, so it helped me to understand how it works. So that's how I use AI most of the time. And ChatGPT, it's more for me to understand, okay, what should I do now? So it's more that type of thing. But like Kristin said, actually, when you write with AI, you can see it. There are words, when I read an email or when I read an article, you can see that it was written with AI. Because of words, it's very specific words, or because of the comma, or because you can see it. So yeah, it's better not to use it.
And Bobby?
I use ChatGPT to edit my last 2 books.
Oh, okay.
It was fabulous. So what I did is I asked it to check for grammar, check for spelling, and also there were certain parts where I would say, can you say this better? Can you clarify it? And it would beat me every time. It would be really good. Now, that being said, I would only take a sentence or a half of a sentence or whatever. It wasn't much, but it was enough that it clarified the thought. Now, just to show you how well it did, when you self-publish a book on Amazon, when you upload it, what happens is it does a check for all those errors. And normally it'll come up with a dozen small little ones. This time it came up with 2, and they were jargon. So it was basically terms it didn't understand. So it got it 100%. Another thing I use it for is sometimes to check out emails, phishing emails. So if there's something that I don't understand, if I'm not sure if it's legit or not, I'll just put it in the chat GPT and say, what do you think about this? And it will sometimes spot some things that, I didn't think were so obvious. So those are 2 things. Let me give you another example. This is something that goes back to what Matt was talking about. I know of a case of a very famous 80s artist who wanted to redo his catalog. Basically, so they could release it and make more money direct rather than going through, publisher and label. And so they were going to re-record it. And the problem was his voice had changed so much in that time. So what they did was they just sampled his voice from the 80s, and he re-sang everything and just used that. Used his voice from there. And I promised I wouldn't say who it was, so I won't, but it's someone that's very famous.
Yeah, I think we could guess. And Mike, just one really quickly, one of the things I've been using it for, especially ChatGPT 4, is I'll take a PDF of, let's say it's some kind of legal complaint, and I'm not a lawyer, so I will, ingest that and say, for someone who's not a lawyer, what are the 10 points that I need to take away from this? And then that worked pretty well. And I started doing it with some of these big decks that you get that are PDFs that have so much text to go through. It's like, I'll get through it, but give me the executive summary, like what are those things that are key points that I need to pull out of this? And I find that invaluable.
Yeah, for sure. And I do a lot of teaching, and I use ChatGPT for just give me a quiz and, on a given subject. And I go through it, of course, but it's such saves time. I'm going to ask everyone on the call, if you could kind of, within your sphere, whatever kind of area you're in, what sort of rules and regulations or laws would you like to see implemented in the, let's call it the next 3 years, that for whatever reason will really improve this situation that we're having with AI? So
like on the music side.
Yeah, on the music side. So I'm going to start with Matt, since he's up in my left-hand corner here.
Thank you. Something I want to come back to really quickly, though, not this moment, but we've all been talking about using AI. I want to talk about the fact that we've all accidentally been feeding their training data. By the way, right now I have ChatGPT recreating your entire book, Bobby. It's printing your entire book in front of me right now.
Well, you won't be the first one.
Well, by the way, Matt, before you go on, a Christmas gift I got this year was somebody created a book written by me, which was not written by me, and had it bound. And it's coherent. It's a little weird, but it's basically, because of your morning coffee, it's like caffeine and creativity. And they created this entire book.
Congratulations, Jay.
Yeah.
You didn't have to work.
Yeah. Mike, can I hear your question again?
Yeah, well, just, whatever, to a general question, what laws or rules or regulations would you like to see implemented? And then I'll add to that, and is there anyone sort of at the, in terms of lawmakers that this is even on their radar and that we should be paying attention to?
People are paying attention, and there's a lot of noise, and you've got a lot of people arguing different cases too. governments everywhere. The first thing I will say, though, is a little separate from music. I believe that every citizen deserves likeness protection. And I believe we need new laws and regulations, at least in the United States, that protect everyone's likeness, not just Drake's voice, but all of us. And I think deepfaking any of us should be strongly illegal and enforced. So the first thing is I would like all American citizens have their likeness protected. And likeness to me is not just your voice and what you look like, it's how you walk. If you're an Uber driver, it's how you drive. Nobody should be forced into becoming training data. And if someone wants your likeness for training data, they should pay for it. I think that I would like to see that outputs are copyrightable, but we'll need some regulation around how much human interaction needs to occur in the process so that the outputs are copyrightable. I don't necessarily believe put a quarter in and just spit something out should necessarily be copyrightable, but there's some amount of human influence when something I do believe should, and I'd like to see that further defined. Great news just this past week in terms of some adjudications around the studios being able to copyright, their work when they use it as part of special effects. I would like to see the music industry agree to, as rapidly as possible, what is the split between publishing and master when there's $1 to be shared from this new marketplace. That is it 50-50? Is it 70-30? Who gets the 70-30? My business isn't going to define that, but we built a system that can support wherever the industry agrees. And it may end up being different in different territories, and we can support, those things as well. For my business, I'd like to see, that sorted out as soon as possible. I'm very happy about AB 2013, the new law in California that came into effect this month. And it means that starting January 1st of next year, if you do business in any way in California, you have to publish your training data and where you got it. And I believe that law is already having an incredibly positive effect on our market, because if you're a big AI company, you've got less than a year until you're publishing a giant list of who should sue you.
And anyone we should kind of keep an eye on in terms of lawmakers and folks that are really kind of spearheading a lot of these efforts?
I am not part of that conversation. There are, I know that the guys from Soundful have participated in roundtables. Vicki Nauman, who's an advisor to us, has participated in roundtables. I try to remain, my business sits in between AI companies and rights holders, creating a sustainable and transparent way for them to do business together. And so I try to stay as neutral as I can, because I need to benefit both sides of that equation. Right. And I can only do that if everyone's sort of playing nice. So I'm here to support what the industry and regulations come down. I will say something somewhat controversial, though, and this is just my opinion. I believe the outputs are derivative works.
Interesting. Kristin, how about you? Laws, rules, regulations, what should we be maybe expecting or hoping for? And who in your sphere that you're observing is kind of driving a lot of these things?
I mean, the RIAA is super involved. I would say they're driving a lot of that. And to be specific within music companies, UMG has been the most bullish on going after people. They were kind of the first to file a lawsuit. It's the UMG, ABCO, and Concord suing Anthropic. ABCO and Concord are admin, or they have a tie to UMG. So we could say UMG is there. They're also in the Suno and Udio case, along with the two other majors. They have been very heavily involved and have been making a lot of public statements too about quote unquote responsible AI, as they call it, and how they want to shape that future. And as the world's largest music company, I do think they're going to have a lot of sway. So those are some people to definitely look out for. I would like to also see some regulations, self-imposed regulations within the streamers. I want to see them figure out different policies for two different areas. One being deceptive content. So anything that's like a deep fake, or something that's really ripping off another artist, whether that's AI or not, I want to make sure that there are procedures that people can take if they catch something that sounds eerily like them or seems to be ripping them off in some way other than copyright infringement, because that's obviously something that people have been dealing with for a long time. But I guess kind of in the realm of like your name, image, likeness, I want to make sure that there's like a way for people to report that. And I know some streamers have that already. And two is trying to gate like spamming with streaming services. So this kind of goes back to my first response about the things that keep me up at night. But like with AI, I could make 100 songs today or more and just start mass uploading them through distributors to streaming services. And if those streaming services don't have any measures in place to stop me from doing that, I mean, I could stick a bot farm on all of it and make a lot of money, or I could just organically see if I make some money from it. And it's like, you know, it took me only a day to figure that all out. So I just want to make sure that those kind of regulations are being thought about. And I've been having conversations with streaming services to see where their heads are at. It seems like a lot of them are pretty aligned on this. It's just hard to figure out exactly how to implement it. So those are the things I'm looking forward to.
Thanks. Virginie?
Yes, sorry, I'm because of the fires I have, I'm still sick actually.
Sorry.
So I agree about likeness, but well, outside of the US, you know, in Europe, there are likeness protection. So it's a bit different. That's why we really have to work on, you know, I would say global likeness protection. Even if you look at, you know, the EU, the UK, the US, it's different everywhere. But so my company, we use AI to detect AI. I mean that we use AI to detect copyright infringement, and we use AI to detect Gen AI music. So we are quite close of, you know, the big stakeholder that Kristin mentioned, because we work with them actually. So I'm less neutral than Matt because, you know, we are more involved. But first, so we talked about the Matt talked about in the data privacy and likeness, and I would say that I also would like to work on the opt-out, which is something that really irritates me a lot, because now everything is opt-out. Look at, for instance, Gemini in Gmail. I don't know how to remove Gemini. I don't want Gemini in my Gmail. I don't want it. I don't want to use it. I don't want, you know, use AI on my LinkedIn, for instance. And it's like, I don't want to have AI on Instagram. And it's something that on Gmail, if you know how to, you know, to remove it, you opt out, I would love to know, because I can't do it. So I really would like to have somewhere regulation about opt-out, and making sure that everything is opt-in and it's not opt-out by default. I want to have the choice to use Gemini or not in my Gmail, for instance. So it's really something. And same with data training, because now data training is opt-out, and we all know that opt-out doesn't work. Actually, I was with Matt. We were both, you know, in London last week, and we talked together at the Musical AI conference, and it was, you know, one of the topics. It's like opt-out is an illusion. It doesn't work. You can't opt out. So it's really something that I would like to see. And unfortunately, when you see what's happening in the EU with the AI Act, when you see what's happening in the UK, it's not something that they want to do. I mean, you know, legislator and government. Something else, it's about copyright laws. So just to make sure that we can clarify whether, you know, AI-generated works fall under, you know, traditional copyright law, and who hold the rights, because so it's reproduction rights, mechanical rights. So Matt talked about repartition. So according to CISAC, it's 50-50, but it's not sure all the time. So absolutely, we need to also to clarify, you know, whether those works fall under traditional copyright law. Yesterday we had the report from the Copyright Office, but I can't say that it was very clear. They, you know, mentioned the output, but there's really no real data and insights about what to do after the output. So it's also something I would like to see clarified. I also would like a clarification about and regulations about AI transparency and attribution. We need to label AI. For instance, on Spotify, on Deezer, on all DSPs, on YouTube, consumer, us, we have the right to know if it's AI or not. So we really need to label it and to have kind of regulations about the attribution of AI. We have the right to know if it's purely AI, if it's 100% AI. I mean, we really need to know it and to work on it. Licensing and royalties, so same. We need to work on regulation about fair royalty distribution when there is assistance of AI in composition or production. To know who holds the rights 50-50 and how to determine fair royalty distribution. I would say also maybe about fair competition, because we talk about licensing, but at the end an output will compete with a real artist. So here we need to understand, that it won't limit opportunities for human artists. So how can we work on it and make sure there will be no monopoly, from music creation, from AI music creation, and that we can still, open opportunities for human artists. Kristin talked about music production, but we can see that based on data from the Harvard Business Review from 2 months ago, I guess, that they just demonstrated that since the launch of ChatGPT, we can see that jobs in writing and translation drops by more than 30%, 35%. So it's a lot. There is job displacement, so we need to work on it. And also, I would say frameworks about ethical AI guidelines and make sure that AI is used ethically, even if I hate the word ethical, which means absolutely nothing. I would say, like maybe responsible, but it's also something for the music industry we should work on. Sorry, it's the lawyer inside me, who talked.
I never noticed it. Nice. And Bobby.
Well, I agree with everything that's been said here. I'll go another place. If we think that the banning of TikTok was because of a national security issue, imagine what's going to happen with DeepSeek. Oh, yeah. Because we're adding 100, 1,000 times more information. So I would like to find out in the future whether this is truly a national security issue or not.
Yeah.
Are we going to find that? Is it possible? I don't know.
Yeah, it's all of this is so fascinating. As we wind it down, I just had one quick final question and sort of a lightning round in sort of the length of a tweet. Get out your crystal ball. Where do you see AI in 3 years, as far as, innovations or abuse or licensing or whatever topic that is important to you? If you could look ahead maybe 3 years, when we sort of sort out some of these things, what are some of the things that excite you? And let's do that in the length of a tweet, and we'll start off with Matt.
AI will be everywhere. It'll be so pervasive that we won't talk about it the same way we don't talk about the electronic highway anymore.
Kristin?
I think that there's going to be a shift among music AI companies away from just doing click of a button music generation to things that are more interactive with humans.
Virginie?
I think we won't talk about AI system anymore, like DeepSeek, OpenAI, and Anthropic, but we will talk about applications. And people will use the application that they like, and we won't talk about AI systems anymore.
Bobby?
I don't think there's going to be that much of a change in my end of the business in music production. Things may get more intelligent, but still it needs a human in most cases. So I think that's the good part. And that may change, but not in 3 years, I don't think.
Matt, Kristin, Virginie? Bobby. Thank you guys so much for taking the time. We could talk about this for hours and hours. I hope to do this again sometime, but we really appreciate you.
And we're humbled. Thank you for
thank
joining
you
us.
Thank you guys
so much.
Thank you so much, Jay and Mike. You guys are
Yeah,
icons.
thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks very
We
much.
stand on the shoulders of giants.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.